you're going to learn 3 tips that you can use to handle the pressure to play well. Now, as an athlete, every time you go out on the field or on the court, your goal is to always play well, right? That's why you're going out there. You're not out there to lose. You're not out there to play your absolute worst that day. So we know that you're always wanting to play your best. But what happens when this desire to play your best can actually be the very thing keeping you from playing as well as you can? That's what we see a lot when it comes to pressure holding you back. Now, pressure can definitely be something that's helpful, especially if you feel the pressure and that pressure causes you to be more motivated to train, or that pressure causes you to be more focused when it comes to competing. However, when the pressure leads to stress, fear, and tension, then we know that this pressure will only hold you back. Now, I was contacted by a parent the other day, and she was asking me about working with her son. He's a high school baseball player. Now, he also plays flag football, which we'll get into here in a second, but she was reaching out to me because he's struggling right now with really high expectations, and so he's not performing as well during games because he's getting down on himself after mistakes. He's going up to bat with a lot of fear, a lot of tension. The pressure is getting to him. But when I was talking to her on the phone, I asked her whether or not he experienced similar challenges when it came to football. And she said that no, when he's playing flag football, this is something he's just doing for fun, so he's not really experiencing the same type of pressure and also underperforming. What's really interesting here is it's a pattern that I see a lot, where when a sport is played just for fun, the athlete does not feel as much pressure, and so they're able to just perform more freely. However, when they care more about their sport, it's easier to put more pressure on yourself. Have you ever experienced this? Now, the baseball player, he trains a lot for baseball. He's incredibly hardworking, and that's also something I see a lot. When you are hardworking, you put a lot of work in outside of practice, you train on your own, you study the game. That only tends to lead to more expectations for you when it comes to performing well in competition. Those expectations and that pressure can often lead to this idea of, I hope I don't mess up. I hope I don't underperform because I so want to perform my best. That can often lead to tension, which we know will hold you back, which once more will lead to more underperforming. Now, another player that reached out to me recently was a soccer player. Now, this soccer player was telling me how he's been starting a few different teams recently over the past few years, and there's this pattern that's formed. Once he starts a team, he begins playing well. So he has a good start to the team, shows the coaches what he can do. But what often happens is after he has that good start, his performance decreases. Now, the reason his performance is decreasing is because once he has the good start, instead of using that as confidence, really leaning into that success he's had so far, it transfers into this feeling of, I hope I don't mess up. I have to keep up this level of success now. This is also something I've seen a lot in golfers when it comes to an individual round of golf or even a tournament, where they feel, all right, I've been doing really well up to this point. I can't mess it up now. And then almost, it's as if they are tiptoeing throughout the rest of their round or the rest of the tournament, expecting themselves to mess up and hoping not to mess up, which, hoping not to mess up is never a great place to find yourself in during games. So back to that soccer player example, because he's been having early success with these teams, that early success makes it more likely for him to feel the pressure to have to continue to play well. So no matter where this pressure is coming from, if you feel the pressure to play well and it is causing you to underperform, you really need to work on handling this pressure in a more positive way. And that's where these 3 tips come into play. Tip number 1 is you want to keep things simple for yourself. It's so easy when you start to perform well, or even if you feel the pressure to perform well, it's very easy to feel like you need to do something new, you need to do something extraordinary or do something extra special, when the truth of the matter is, you need to continue to do what you've done to be successful up to that point on a more consistent basis. So with that soccer player example, if he's having early success with these teams, he doesn't need to change something, right? He doesn't need to all of a sudden find some new asset to his game. If he's been playing well up to that point, all he needs to do is continue to do what he's been doing more consistently. Now, the natural path of progress will lead him to becoming better and better and better. He'll develop more skills within his game. That's just the truth of, progress within sports. but feeling like he needs to do something different, or for yourself, feeling like you have to add something extra special to your game can often lead to trying to force something to happen. So you want to keep things simple. Just focus on staying consistent with your training routines. Stay consistent with the mindset you need when it comes to games. But the more simple you can keep things, especially in terms of your focus actually when it comes to playing a game, the better you'll be able to handle this pressure. Now, tip number 2 is that you want to focus more on progress instead of focusing on perfection. What I mean by focusing on progress is you need to see the growth that you are making as an athlete. It's so natural as athletes to focus on where you need to improve. The reason is because you naturally want to keep getting better as a player, right? You want to keep getting, better and better, increasing levels, separate yourself from your competition. But when you are looking for areas to improve, isn't it true that most often you're looking at mistakes you've made? So this shows us that it's more natural for you to focus on your mistakes than it is for you to focus on your successes. When you focus more on your mistakes over time, especially when you're dealing with this pressure, it can lead to more fear and it can lead to more tension and anxiety whenever you are playing. Now, I'm not saying that you don't want to focus on things you need to improve. You need to be working and improving. However, along the way, you also need to focus on the progress you are making. And when it comes to this progress, it's not just about having some staggering explosion of growth in your game where you go from hitting 250 to 350, or you go from having 3 points a game to having 10 points a game. When we're talking about focusing on progress, it's focusing on the small growth that you're making every single day. And then tip number 3 is you want to set different standards for yourself. There's a very big difference, though it might seem small, between standards and expectations. When you're trying to perform well under pressure and you expect yourself to perform perfectly under pressure, those expectations will only add further fuel to the fire of the fear and the tension that you're playing with. Because expectations have to do with the outcome. I expect myself to get a certain number of points, a certain number of steals, assists, shots, a certain score in golf, a certain number of hits in baseball or softball. Standards, on the other hand, have to do with the way you play. The reason you want to focus more on setting these standards for yourself instead of setting expectations is because standards have more to do with the process and the way you play, which is what leads to the outcome that you want within your game. To set standards for yourself, what I recommend is making a list of everything that you need to do in order to play your best. What you want to focus on that will honestly help you get that result that you're after during games. So then whenever you're feeling this type of pressure, you fall back on these standards. You make sure, am I doing all these standards that I've set for myself, and am I doing them consistently? Because if you stick to these standards, that will give you the best chance of having the success that you want during games. So right now, if you are struggling to perform well under pressure and to handle this pressure that you feel, apply these 3 tips, and I have confidence that they will help you perform your best under pressure. In addition to performing well under pressure, you also want to make sure you are starting games with confidence. So what I've done right here is linked another video that goes into some exercises that you can use to build your confidence as an athlete. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.